Hello and welcome back. In this module 2, we'll be looking at HTML5 form and form elements. So we'll be building together a contact us form page, right? And that will allow us to actually see the different form elements that are available to us when we are working with form. It's going to be comprehensive because I'm going to show you not just the elements that are used in the contact form field. I'm going to extend it to other possible form elements that are also available. Let me just show you the contact form screen first that I'll be working on. So here is the contact us screen that we'll be working on. It's just in addition to what we've been doing before. So you remember that we've worked on this, right, in the last section. So we want to add a form to the contact us section, right? So you can type the name of the person, all right? You can type here, you can type email here, all right? So you can see that you can type email here or select an email. You can select either of these, right? That's how radio buttons work. You can also select your interest, which is checkbox, right? So you can also send a message, which is a long text, right? Then once you are done, you can submit. So of course, this is not working because you are not submitting to anywhere, but you can see that it tries to submit to this part, but we are not just handling that, right? So that is what we'll be working on quickly. So just like I've always done, right? I want to walk you through some concepts, right, before jumping into that. So the learning objective here is to actually create a form, learn to create form, and also collect user input. So HTML forms are a crucial part of web development, right? So virtually it's hard to actually work on a project and not actually use a form, because that's how you submit something to the backend, right? Whether login form, whether register form, whether product form, and all kind of form inputs, right? So you need to, it's very, very important that you know how to deal with forms very well. So users are able to submit input data to a server for processing. So form elements actually, right, is used to create HTML form that contains various input elements. Just like I showed you here, you can see that here we have different input elements. So the entire thing here is form, but we have this name field, right, which is an input element. We have the email field, which is an input element. We have this radio field, right, which is an input element. We have the interest field, which is an input element. We also have this is an input element. Even this one also is an input element with a type of something, right? So that's what I'm trying to actually buttress there. So it's the form element itself, right, is used to create a form, like I've said, and it has attributes. So usually, don't forget we've talked about attributes too, and it should be getting clearer now. There are some elements that have specific attributes that makes them work properly. For instance, the anchor element, if you remember, must have the href attribute for it to work, right? Image element must have src attribute for it to work. So for form two, form have action attributes, right? Where which is actually where you submit the path to which you want the form to be submitted to. Then we also have the method, right? Uh, the method is usually get or post, right? Depending on how you want to. This talking about the method which you want to submit to the backend. Don't worry if you don't understand what method is all about now, but we'll see that eventually, right? So this is how you write form. If you are dealing with just JavaScript, for instance, if I want to submit this with just JavaScript, I may not necessarily put it inside a form, right? I may not put action here because I will not be submitting it through the route. Instead, I'll be using JavaScript to listen to events and collect and submit. But for now, right, we're just dealing with the basic form usage where you want to submit through the action and you are using the method of post. And I will not delve into the choice of whether you should use post or get here, right? At some point, I will talk about that. But don't just note that whenever you are working with form, the form element, the opening tag and the closing tag must be available. Then the attribute, these two attributes, right? The minimum, the action where you want to submit the form to, the method, right? The method, HTTP method for sending the data, right? It can either be get or post. That's basically what you have there with form. Then when it comes after the form, inside the form, this is going to be expecting form elements, right? As you can see here, right? I have the form, which is like the container. Then we have the form elements that goes in there. And that's what you have here. So when it comes to form elements, you have input elements, right? And input elements do have attributes. For instance, so you know what I would do? Let's just set up the workspace, right? For this current task, the form project that I want to quickly screen that I want to quickly work on, right? So that I can also do some explaining as I do that. So in the HTML basics, right? This is the first task that we worked on. So what I would do is that I'll just duplicate this task, right? Because that's what I want to enhance. I just want to add a form field to it, right? So I'll just duplicate that and rename it to task 2, right? And you can also do that. Don't forget the link, the source code is made available, right? In the description section, you see the GitHub link, right, to the resource. You can also go there and copy, right, if you don't want to go through the hassle of typing all through. But I will encourage that you type all through, because as you do that, you're also learning. So I'm going to bring this to my VS Code, right, and just drop it in there. All right, so just drag this in so that we can have that. All right, so this is task 2, right? Although we know that what we have there was the very first task that we worked on, right? So I just want to update this section, which is the contact us page section here, right? So we just ensure that we have a form, just place a form here, right? Um, form. So like I was trying to explain, right? We are dealing with input elements and what it looks like. So generally, this is what you have. So you have the form element first, this way, the opening tag and the closing tag, right? Then, of course, like I said, you can have the method here that tells what method you want to use, right, in submitting the form. Then here we can also just have the path. You can just say uh, contact page here. So that's the path we are kind of submitting to. So then the elements goes in here. So you can do and undo here, depending on the design, right, and how you want to arrange your element. But just for a start, you can have input field here, right, and then an input field here. So and this can be a type of, let's just say type of text for now. So once I save this, let's check this out and open this in the live server. So if I scroll down, right, you'll notice if I scroll down here, so you can see the input field here, right? And I can type in there. So that's the first, but this is inside a form element, right? So that's the first element. And you can have many elements here, as many as the design require, right? That's just one. I can have another one here that says inputs, right? Let's say this one says inputs, and we can have a type of password, right? So if the design requires that, that can also be a thing. So as you are typing, you see that that's password, right? I can choose to click here to show what was typed. So that's how you work with input field. You first of all have the form element, which is like the container, right? Then the actual input elements are going here. So what you now need to master is the input elements and the various input elements and how they work, right? And the different attributes that are available to them. So that's just a general way of working with form elements, right? So we have different types of attributes when it comes to we have different attribute types when it comes to input field. I've already shown you two, right? You can see here I have to use type of text. Then usually this type will dictate the behavior of the input field. So type of text, type of password will just make sure that you have that encryption that I'm having here, right? If you have type of email too, it will ensure that that field, right, works and behave like email. If you have type of radio, type of checkbox, we are going to see all that, right? While I walk through this. So that's it about input elements. You just need to master enough elements to go in there. Then usually when you are working with form fields too, you also have labels, right? Usually these labels are used to associate text description with a form element. As you will notice here now, this is just here. I don't know what it's for. This is here. I don't know what it's for. So it's common to have a label for each of these input fields so that we can easily know what they are meant for, right? So usually you have something like this label, and this would be for. So I will just say label for name, for instance. That's the label for name field. So this is like you are saying this label, right, should be for this input field. But if you don't pass the for name, if you don't pass the for attribute and also map it to the ID here and put name, right, it won't work. So, but right now, screen reader will know that, okay, this label is actually for this input field because you have mapped it with this ID and for. So whatever you are placing, value you are placing in the ID field on the input element, right, must be exactly the same value you are placing in the for field, right, the value of the for field. So here we can just say name, and once I save that, right, you can see name here. But screen reader will know that this name belongs to this input because you already tied with the ID, right? The same thing with the password. You can just say label for password, right? And you just make sure that, okay, you also place, okay, think I missed, okay, yeah, see the same thing. Let me just return this back, right? So here we can just have password here also. Label for password. I just want to ensure that you have ID of exactly that name to password, right? So screen reader will be able to map the two together. Here we have password. So password. So this way now we know what the labels are for. This for name, this for password. So we'll still talk about some others. Usually you hear of placeholders, right? I don't want this to be long. So here we can just say placeholder and say placeholder of, let's say this is name or your name. So you will notice that placeholder in the, can you see it here? So just providing the user with that hint of what the input field is meant for. So usually too, you have the name field here, which is very useful when it comes to collecting the form value. So the name field is important because when you want to collect the form value of whatever user type in there, usually use the name field to actually do that, especially when you are working with JavaScript and submitting the forms with JavaScript. So two things I've highlighted here now. You just carry this to the other element types, right? Input element types. There is the name, there's the label field for each input field, right? There's the label field which kind of describe what the input field is all about. And I said the label field has a for attribute, right? And the way you type both is that the for attributes value must be exactly the value of the ID attributes on the input field. The same thing with the password. Then you can see that the attributes here, the type here is text, right? And it gives us a different behavior from when the type is password, right? So these attributes, just master them and work with them. That's it about that part, right? Then submit button. If you want to submit, right, we also have a type for that. So here I can just say input with type of, instead of type of text, I will just say type of submit. So once you do that, it's going to allow you, this will behave like as a submit button, right? Like a submit button. So you can see submit here and I can actually click on this, right? So once I click on this, it's going to submit. Can you see now that it is submit, but we are submitting to a page that does not exist. And that's why we have that behavior. So that's for submit button, but you can see that all of them are input fields. So that form field is very simple, right? Working with form is very simple. Once you master all these things and the different attributes that are actually available to us, right? Then we also have select box, right? Select box. So for select box, usually you have this, you have the label, like I've mentioned. So you can see the select field. Let me just try to do that. Select element, I mean. So here let's have the label for first, label for cars. Let's just say label for cars. Then here we can say select. That means you want to provide the user with options. And you can see that it comes with this attribute, the name attribute. I'll just say cars, right? The ID, I will still say cars, right? And I already explained why this ID value must match the for value, right? And here, can just say in between here, you now have the different options. So this select element, we always expect options that are available, right? Can just say option. That will be the option one. In the option, you pass the value. So this is, let's say this is A, car A, right? You say value A, right? I'm just using it for example now. Car A, value A, then you provide on that one. Car B, right? And anytime the person selects B, you are sending the value B, right? Car C, right? Value C. So the value is what is going to be submitted as the selected value. While the C is just a display text for the user to understand what is there, right? So once you have this, when you choose one, usually you will have you have an option here that just says no value. Then you will have something like select car, right? So once you have this, you can see here. So can you see now? Select car. And once I do this, I can choose A, right? I can choose B. I can choose C. So that's how you work with select options. Pretty straightforward. No styling. That's why everything is just straight way like this. By the time I style, we'll have things properly shaped. So this is how you work with select boxes and present options to users to actually choose from. So that's it. We select box. Then we have text area. Usually, don't forget I showed you the input field, but input type, right? And we're able to type name field there. There are times that you want long text, right? And this simple input type of text, right, will not just be sufficient. You want something much more, right? That's when you start working with text area. So here I can just say description, right? Description, then ID of description. Then in between here, you can now put whatever you want there. So by just doing this and saving this, you should see the text area. You can see that this is big, right? Usually we can increase it by setting some attributes on it. So you can set calls of let's say 50. Then you can also set rows of 100. So once you set that, the form field will become bigger. So as you will notice, you can see here, right? So I'll just keep it short by removing let's just use 10 for the rows. So you can see that this is wider enough, right? Compared to what we have for the just input type of text field. That's what we have with working with text area, select box, right? Input type of password, input type of text. We have many more input fields that you should be aware of, but this is just a right way to start, right? Um, then now at this point, I just want to show you a demo, right, that walks you through the different possible values that we have. So I have that here. So if you check this, so can you, if you first check this, these are different possible input types that we have. So we have type of checkbox, and this is what we have, right? Consider I can check this, right? So, but exactly this is the HTML. We have input type of dates. So when you're working with date and you want the user to select date, you can see I can select a date from here, right? That's working with date. Then if input type of time, you can also select time field, right? You can select time field. Then email, type of email, you can drop email there. If you want to choose a file from the local environment, you can also choose a file, right? And just click OK, it chooses the file for you. Then type of number, right? Only number goes in only number is expected to actually go in here, right? So type of password too, I've shown you that this makes this give us this encryption that we need. Type of radio, right? You have this radio means you can only select one option, right, from a list of options that you have. Then type of range. So you can select from a range using this. You have this effect. Then search. So the difference between test and search, type of test and type of search, is that you have this close icon that can allow you to cancel what has been typed before. So that's when you use type of search, right? Then we have type of test. You will not have that behavior that we have in type of search. Then submit, I already talked about it. This is what allows us to submit a form. Now, if I want to clean everything here, I can use the type of reset. In type of reset, once you click it, it cleans everything, right? So these are different type of input, common input fields that you'll be working with. So we've gone through HTML element itself and the form and the HTML input elements that we could have, right? So what we now want to do is we want to quickly work on this to complete this section, right? We want to work on this, right? So that we can have this input field style this way. So let's get to that quickly. What I will do is, so here we are just going to, I'm going to clean this up so that we can have things formatted properly. So here I'm just going to have a class. I will add a class here so that I can use it for styling, right? Class of form. So I'll be using that for styling that part. Then let me just put a comment here and say this is for name field. And the way I will do this is that I will package them. We've talked about arrangements in HTML. So look at this form now. You can see that things are grouped. The label and this input field, they are grouped together, right? The email label and this group together, gender together, interest together, message together. So when you are presenting your HTML to, you want to make sure that you position yourself to do that. So what I will do here is that I'm going to put the label in a div. Don't forget, a div is just a container to hold stuff, right? So we are going to have two items there. I'm going to have label and I'm going to have input. All right. So in order to let them have the required style, right, I will put a class here. Class of I will just call it form group. Form underscore group. Right, form underscore group. And the label is going to be for name. And that means that I'm going to have name here. Right, I'm just going to have name here. And the value, this one too is going to have ID, just to make sure that the label is tied to the input field. And this is just going to be name too. And as a matter of fact, the name field also should be here, right? And I'll just say name, so that if I want to collect the form field value, I can actually, input field value, I can actually do that. So this way now I can start this, right? And group it together using the form underscore group. Then again, we can go to another one and say email. So the email field will follow this pattern too, where we have the form group, right? I'll just copy that and paste here. So form group, then this one will now be email, right? And this will be email. So email, then the type here is going to be email, right? And the name field, all these are going to be emails too. Email, then the name field also, let's change it to email. So just as an addition, you can also have an extra attribute here, placeholder, and just say your email at gmail.com, right? Just like a placeholder, so that user knows what's to go in there. Then after the email section, we have the gender, right? So for the gender field also, you have that form group layout, right? Div. So div, then you have the form group, class of form underscore group, so that once I style it once, it applies to all these things, right? So what I want here is I want the label, and that's going to be for gender, label for gender, and here we just say gender. right? And underneath that, if you see the way this is arranged, that's why I said when you are working, you have to be aware of that. You see that this is not just like this, right? Right. I have the gender, which is the label. Then I now have I have two items, right? Two are input fields here, which are radio button for which I want the user to be able to select from. So I will package these two inside a div again, so that eventually I can have I can have just two items, right? One is the gender, the other one is a container holding the options, radio options from which the users can select. So here I'm going to have a div instead of just having uh, the input field directly. I will have a div since I know I have two items going in there. I will have a div, then I will give this a class of checkbox, right, underscore group. So the class name is up to you. Then inside there, I want to have those input fields. So this is going to be input, right, with a type of radio, right? I'll just say ID of male, name of gender. Then I'll just say the value. So whenever this is selected, the value should be male, right? And I want to say this field is required so that the user must, it means the user must select it. By the time the user wants to select it, if that is not there, it's going to be an issue, right? Then inside there too, I want a label, right? And that will be male, label for male. That's why I have ID of male here, right? Then I'll just put male here. And if you notice that, that is what I also have here, male, right? With the radio button. So here to since I have this now, I can just copy this. We have two of it, right? So I can just come down here and also say here we want female, female, right? The name is still gender, right? Then we want the value to be female, so that once it is selected, that's what we are passing down. It's going to be required to, right? Then what else? So the for attribute here is going to be for female, and this is going to be female, right? So that's just what we have here. And if you come and inspect now, right, this page you've been working on, you will see that that is there. So you can see now it's not styled, but you can see gender, male, female. I can choose between either of these, right? You can see the email field, you can see the text field. So that's that. Then we can also check out on the next one, which is the interest, right? So let's quickly check on the interest. So for interest, we can just say let me see, where did I stop this? Here. After gender, right, we just say interest. So interest, for the interest, we are going to have something similar to what we've been doing, right? So we're also going to have form group. So here you can just say div, right? With class of form group, just like we've been doing, right? So then we can now have label, and that's going to be for interest. Label for interest, and we're just going to put interest here. Right. So immediately after that, this is what I'm following, right? So that we are on track. This is it here, interest. Then we want to provide this checkbox options for user to see to pick from. So interest, then here we're also going to have exactly what I have up there, checkbox group, right? So that we can use style that ones and to apply everywhere. So here we are going to have a class of checkbox group. right? Because it's similar to what I just did here. It's similar to what I did for gender, right? That's why I'm using the same class. So here we can just have inputs with a type of checkbox, input with a type of checkbox, right? And ID, just the ID of sports, right? ID of sports. Then we can now have the label. The label too is going to have so this is going to be label for sports, right? So that this is mapped to the input field correctly, right? Then we can now also do for so that should be for music, right? Music. I do the same thing here. Checkbox group. Instead of sports here, we just say music. And here we are going to have music. Right. So by the time you check here, we have we should have that. So interest is in now, right? You can see that this thing is pretty straightforward. You can select more than one interest. So the next thing is when you look here, the next thing here is the text area, right? The text area field where you can actually submit your message. So here we can just say description here, right? Description. And here we are just going to have something that is pretty straightforward also. We're going to have div, right, with a class of form group. Then we're going to have the label field, right? The label field, label for, let's just say message, label for message, and we can just say message here, right? Then down here, we can now have the text area elements. So the name here is message, and the ID also is message, right? So once we have that, we can add some other stuff here. I want the rows to be 4, and then the column should be 50, so that is big enough, right? Then we can just say required, so that this field must be actually must not be empty when submitted. So that's what we have here. And when you check here also, you should see that already. All right. So we have that. It's not styled already. It's not styled yet. So that's why we have it like this. So the final thing we want here is the call to action, right? Which is this button, call to action. So let's just work on that. So for the call to action, I'll just think this sense here. So I'll just say CTA, call to action, CTA. So here too, we are going to have a div, right? With a class of, just a class of CTA, call to action. Then inside that div, we are going to have the input field with a type of button, a type of submit, So that will ensure that we are submitting. So you can pass a value of submit to this. Submit. So this allows us to submit the form. And yes, once you check here, right, you're going to have that, right? So you can see that it's not allowing us to submit because we have required on some of these fields. That's it with what we need to capture here, right? What is left now is just to have style here. And since we've not done anything on styling, what I'll just do is that I will bring in the style and I'll walk you through quickly what is going on there. Eventually, we'll be able to learn styling and you'll be able to add styles on your own. So I've brought in the styles, right? And you can see here, you can see that I'm targeting the form here. I placed a class on the form element here. If you remember, I placed a class here, form, right? That's what I'm targeting. You can see the style that I applied here. So the form is having max width of 500. If you check here, you see that it has been applied, right? So it has been applied. This is the form with this light shadow around it. And these are the input fields. So it's looking fine now because it has been styled. So yeah, that's it with the form field, right? And in styling, the color, there is the padding, is there, border radius, box shadow. Don't worry if you don't understand all this here, right? You get to understand that. Then I also target the form group using the class, right? And you can see I place a margin bottom there, attribute there. Then we also have the checkbox group where I use flexbox to actually align the item to the center. The same thing with labels. So these are just the stylings that I have there that apply. So if you are just starting, like, this series is meant for beginners, right? You might not understand what is going on here, but eventually, once I've gone through the CSS sections, right, this will be straightforward and you'll be able to work with them. So let me see. All right, so that's it with working with form section. And if you want to also read more on that, you can go to this particular you can go to this particular website, right, and check this section. So you'll be able to see that we have the form section and the possible elements that are available to be used there, right? Okay, you can see now we have different type of forms here. So having learned the ones that I've gone through, you can also walk through the possible other possible values, right, and how to use them. So that's it. Don't forget to, if you like this, don't forget to subscribe, right? Turn on your notification and also click on the like button. See you in the next section.